thank all of you for being here today. I want to thank our host, Tinuiti, congratulate them on their awesome name change. They did a fantastic job. When I was asked to speak here, the team at Tinuiti was like, oh, the CRO is going to talk, so it's going to be a sales pitch, and we don't want sales pitches. So rest assured, it's not going to be a sales pitch. What we thought we would do today is talk a little bit about some observations that we have on the market, tell you a little bit about the insights that we have from some things that we think about quite often and quite deeply. A lot of it will resonate with what you heard in the keynote this morning. And then I'll close out with a view of how we think things should be and what we're striving to achieve. So we believe what we're in is a period of, it's an unprecedented period within marketing. And you heard this morning, particularly around consumers' expectations. Customers are craving connections. They want you to speak to them. They want experiences that matter. And as we heard, and we firmly believe, they want to be able to trust you. Not only do you have consumers having changing expectations, but I'm sure you feel your leadership and your investors also have changing expectations of you as marketing individuals. Gone are the days of just allocating budget to a bunch of activities that we hope drive revenue. And instead, today you face a world where you have to explain each and every investment you make, and you have to do that at a very granular level. This is very difficult. It's made more difficult because the tools that you've come to use are changing rapidly. A few short years ago, something as easy as organic posting on Facebook was the norm for DTC. It was the bread and butter. It's the foundational element. Then you found yourself having to boost those posts to talk to the same audience. Next, it would seem almost nightly that the algorithm and or the terms would change, and you weren't sure how your content was going to be viewed. This is a challenge. We also found that it became very expensive to use these channels, much more expensive than it used to be. But cost of acquisition isn't the problem, because if you're a great brand with a great offering, you will find an investor or a set of investors who are willing to back you to get over the hump of the capital required to acquire your customers. What has become a problem is the dependency that we've grown on certain channels that we cannot control. Worse, your customers are aware of this problem, particularly when it comes to the data that were being collected about them that we heard this morning, again, in the keynote address. And they're looking to limit those ways, which impact how you go about your daily business. The reaction to this, the reaction to the data we're collecting and the way they feel we're misusing it in interacting with them and then sharing it with others, is leading them to do things like demand of their representatives to pass legislation like we see in Europe with GDPR. That wholesale changes the way you can use data. In a broad stroke, you can no longer do the things that you used to be able to do. We're seeing the same thing with pending legislation in California right here in the States. It's only going to get less efficient and more expensive, particularly when you're collecting this data en masse. But certain brands have really learned to get past this. They can create experiences and connections that customers actually love. For example, Beard Brands is one of our customers. They've taken an unprecedented step, and it's totally against the last person who was on stage from Tinuiti talking about the use of Amazon. They've removed themselves completely from Amazon. They've decided that they have to control that experience. Now, we don't advocate that. In fact, we believe that they will be back to Amazon and leveraging that channel, but they will be doing it in a much different way. That relationship will be different. And why is that? It's because they understand they have a unique advantage. They understand the power of what we refer to as their owned marketing. They know that their website, their app, and their contact list gives them a unique advantage over the other channels. With those elements, you can build great experiences. You can engage your customers. You can control that brand exposure. And you can drive meaningful relationships. And you can do it on your own terms, managing all of the risks associated with this. I'll use an example, Glossier. Emily founded Glossier in 2013 as a blog, as a brand that she wanted to be friends with. They didn't prescribe what beauty was, much to what we heard this morning about the experiences, how customers want to be interacted. They didn't want to be told what beauty was. Instead, they built great products, they shared ideas, and they allowed the consumers and their networks to define what beauty meant to them. And because of this connection, and the way Glossier made them feel, they wanted to share that with others. If we don't think that works, we just have to look to a few short months ago where Glossier was valued as a unicorn over $1 billion. From blog to billions in 6 short years. That's the power of leveraging your own marketing. I've talked a lot about relationships, and this is the point where we spend a lot of time internally at Klaviyo thinking about what are the fundamental building blocks of the elements that we're trying to help you with. And relationship building is at its core. So what is a relationship? Let's think about it for a little bit. We've all built personal relationships. How do we do that? Well, it usually starts even before the first word is uttered. You meet someone new, you're taking in information about them. How do they look? How are they standing? Then you start to notice, what are they saying? All of this is data points, hints, clues, things that you need to take in. Your brain naturally takes this in, and you begin to analyze it. You begin to seek an understanding of who it is you're speaking to. What are they talking about? Is it of interest to you? What should you do with it? And if you're doing this right, you're actually listening and observing and analyzing and understanding at the same time, in real time. Because that interaction between being able to continue to observe as well as understand what's happening allows you to optimize the next step in this process, which is the communication part. What do you do with what you just heard from this person? How do you make that relevant and meaningful? You're going to say, do, or show some expression. What's it going to be? If you do this right, it turns into a loop. In order to do it right, that communication that comes from your level of understanding has to grow. You have to continually, every time when you get back to someone after they've given you something that you've observed, you've got to decide, am I going to tell them what to do? Am I going to make a comment? Am I going to ask a clarifying question? What do I do to further enhance and keep this going as a loop? That's the essence of the relationship. So when you think about it, each of us, we do this pretty effectively personally. We've built great relationships. I assume everybody in the room has relationships with folks. I think what's really interesting, though, is we started to look at this and we started to then apply it. We find that we have limits. There was a study that just came out this last weekend. I think it was Evite that ran the survey, and found that the average adult has only 16 friends. 16. 8 of those are considered good friends, and only 3 rise to the level of best friends. So what happens when you hit this limit? In your personal life, it's not a lot of consequence. You forego an opportunity. You met somebody interesting, but you can't build a relationship because there's no capacity for it. You just can't go through this cycle loop with one more person. I don't need any more friends. We're fine. the consequences are for yours to control. Or you can decide that a relationship that you used to have is no longer important and somebody else slots in. Great. But when we start to talk about it in our professional lives, you start to realize that it's overly challenging to talk to hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands or more of folks and build those relationships in a meaningful way. So what we end up doing is, what you heard this morning, is we try to automate a lot of these things. And we automate them at a level where we don't really have an understanding of who the individuals are. We try to group them in way too coarse of a way. And you deliver bad experiences. Some were really awful this morning that we heard about being published out there. But anything that's not on brand, anything that's not reinforcing that, takes away from everything else that you're doing. Oop, figuring this out. There we go. But this is exactly where technology should fit in. This is exactly where your stack should be able to understand and take in as much data as you can provide it, and I will stress, first-party data about your customer, because that's how you build relationships, on the first-party data. The more you leverage that, the less creepy it will be. The more you build great relationships with folks, through actually knowing them, building great on-brand experiences, the more they're going to invite you in. Here's an example. You can use your website to listen to your customers. If you're building experiences that people enjoy, they were willing to re-engage and talk more to you. What we heard this morning from Forrester around the reluctance to provide information and try to hide it from you actually goes away. And we can tell you that across our entire customer set. The more meaningful the relationship are, the more opportunities you will have to ask additional clarifying questions to fill in holes about the individual. But you have to do that on an individual basis, and across thousands and tens of thousands of customers or more, hopefully, for you. You can't do that yourself. You can't hire enough people times 16 to make that happen. You need a stack that allows you to do that automatically for you. You also have to realize that it's not just about one element. You need the most holistic, full fidelity view of this individual that you possibly can. You need to look at all of the places that you're getting information about that customer of yours and treat them as that customer, not a series of customers, not a group of customers. From that information becomes countless opportunities. For example, it was funny, during one of the sessions I was walking back in, and I overheard someone, I don't even know the full conversation, but there was some inside joke around abandoned shopping carts. And we deal with this all the time, so I was kind of laughing about it. But it's a great example, and I decided to kind of point at this a bit more. Abandoned shopping carts shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all. You should know who's abandoning what. I can tell you from experience, not in abandoned not in abandoned shopping carts. They think I abandoned it. Williams-Sonoma tries to sell me the same panini I bought from them 3 times a day. If you're in the room, I'm sorry, if you're from Williams-Sonoma. But it's true, and it drives me crazy. My wife had an experience with a different brand over the holidays, same thing. The order was sitting on the table, and they kept sending her abandoned shopping carts. But it should go even beyond that. That's really bad when you don't even know you fulfilled the order. But if you start thinking about, is this person a first-time buyer? If they are, then maybe the discount is appropriate. Most people on an abandoned shopping cart is like, here's 10% off, come back and buy. But if they're on your VIP list, if you know that they've purchased from you time and time again, there's something else going on there. How do you re-engage them? How do you use what you know about them to make that experience meaningful? Those interactions then allow you to ask more questions as you go along. The more you know, the more you can start to tailor those interactions. We have a customer, Wab City, that in this case doesn't even ask the question, just uses the purchasing data with a very high bar for understanding whether or not you have a small dog or a large dog. And it drives the imagery you see in the experience. So if you have a little Chihuahua, you're not getting a picture of some Great Dane, and vice versa. It's geared toward you, but in a meaningful way because you understand who that customer is and what they need to see. Coming back, this isn't about not using the other channels. A lot of the other sponsors that are here today are great channels, and we believe very strongly you should be leveraging them. In fact, you should have tools that allow you to do that. Take lookalike audiences. We heard about this morning in the Amazon example. The way to use lookalike audiences effectively is to get them to a very granular level. Understand what lookalike are you looking for, right? Reach out, find that new group. Be thankful that we can use tools like this to get to people that we otherwise couldn't get to and know that much about. But, as we also learned in the keynote, don't sit there and generically assume just because you have a relationship with someone that used to look like that you know anything about the person who just showed up at your doorstep. Start the relationship building process over again from the start. Build a profile on that individual. Get the permission. Get welcomed in to being able to interact with that person. They will stay with you a long time, and they will tell all their friends about it. I guarantee it. So at this point, I want to talk just briefly as I close about the way we think things should work. We think each of you wake up, at least a few times a week, if not every day. And whether it's early in the morning and you drive in or in the shower, you probably got great ideas. You should be able to come in the office and identify whether or not that audience you believed in your idea exists is there. And you should have tools that allow you to be able to do that yourself, not with a CS degree, not with having to go talk to somebody and ask them, hey, can you run this segmentation for me? Which inevitably leads to the soul-crushing experience of finding out that it's going to take days, weeks, or longer. You should have a set of data tools that allow you to then take what you know and build a great on-brand experience in minutes, maybe hours, definitely not days or weeks. That afternoon, you should be in market testing that idea and then have a set of tools that allow you to monitor what's happening and suggest how to correct it if it's not performing the way you want it to. That is the world that's possible. That's what technology should do for you. You shouldn't need a CS degree. You shouldn't need a whole department to do it. You should be able to do it on your own. When you focus on your own marketing channels, you will regain control. But you shouldn't over-leverage on your own marketing channels because they alone can't do this. We need partners like Amazon, like Facebook, like Google. We simply want to restore balance. You bring all of these together. You take what you know from your customer and you drive that to these other channels. And you use that to build even more relationships. But you do it from a place where you are now master of your own destiny again. You are in control. You call the shots. That's the way it should be. And that's what you can do when you leverage your own marketing channels. Thank you.